Hello friends, this is Fox Nival Studios. Today we are here with new chapter. What if Sakura had an older brother who knew things beyond his station? Now let's begin the story. Chapter 1. Kakashi I, and finally, you. Kakashi pointed towards the last genin in his prospective team. The responses he got from Naruto and Sasuke were as expected. They eerily reminded him of himself and Obito. He just hoped that the third one was not similar to Rin. It would be too much a red flag for him to handle. I'm Sakura Haruno. I like spending time with my family and my best friend, Ino. I dislike incompetency and idiocy, she said, scowling at her two teammates. Apparently I am supposed to hate the word useless. I'm not sure why exactly. As for hobbies, I like to read. My dream for the future is to surpass my brother, she finished with a giant smile. Although, he could clearly see both Naruto and Sasuke flinching at the mention of her brother. Alright then, he proceeded to go through the same spiel that he had given all the teams he had failed previously. As he got to the part about failure rates, he played the theatrics up a bit, hoping to spook them. To his disappointment, Naruto was the only one who got truly riled up. Sasuke had an arrogant look on his face as if this whole thing was just a minor inconvenience. Sakura, on the other hand, was unfazed, as if she already knew about all this. God help him from overprotective brothers. He needed to have a word with Ichigo. More likely than not, he would have to stick with this team regardless of their performance and teach them the value of teamwork. It was not much a challenge to manipulate them during the exam and make them willing to help out each other. He was the only one in the village who could teach Sasuke once he unlocks his Sharingan. Moreover, if the Kyuubi reared its head, his Sharingan would help subdue a berserk Naruto. Apart from him, only Tenzo was fit for that role. Since he was most likely going to be their sensei, he really needed to have a talk with Ichigo about what exactly he was teaching his sister. Ignoring a fuming Naruto's rant, he flitted from the spot and appeared atop a tree about 100 meters away. Yo Strawberry, he greeted the nosy boy nonchalantly. Ah, I should have known that you would have noticed me, said the nuisance. Ichigo Haruno was sat atop the neighboring branch, unconcerned about getting caught. He was stealthy, and not many people would have noticed him hold up here. But Kakashi was not a veteran for nothing. He looked at his fellow Jonin and noticed that nothing much had changed about the boy.
He was wearing his newly minted Konoha Jonin uniform, with his infamous sword strapped on his back. His pink hair was as eye-catching as ever, a shade richer than his sister's. If her hair was the same color as Sakura petals, his was the color of freshly picked strawberries. Truly, his parents chose the perfect name for him. It had been a while since he went on a mission with Ichigo, but he had heard that his new squad was making a name for itself.
Of course, a prodigy would always get such attention. Labeled a prodigy in his youth himself, Kakashi completely understood the burden associated with the word. Especially after Itachi, the scrutiny towards young geniuses had just kicked up a notch. But unlike himself and Itachi, Ichigo was not the conventional prodigy who blazed through the academy and the ranks at an early age. Instead, Ichigo had graduated from the academy like everyone else, albeit with flying colors. What nobody realized was that the boy was using all that peaceful time to hone his skills way beyond the genin level. Come graduation time, he had shot past all his peers and made special Jonin with a year, outranking both his parents. Another year of exceptional service, and he was nominated as a full-fledged Jonin. Now, at 14 years old, he was the rising star of the force. What are you doing here? He asked. Oh come on, I just wanted to see how my sister's team was coming along, he replied cheerily. They are not a team yet. They need to pass my test, Kakashi said. We both know that you don't have the luxury of choice, he said with a smirk. Kakashi couldn't help but agree with it. After all, he was thinking something similar just a few seconds ago. Leave the village's Jinchuriki untrained. Despite how much some people would want to throw Naruto out of the Corps, Naruto was a major deterrent just due to his existence. Despite how much Kakashi hated that notion, a Jinchuriki helped bolster the illusion of strength. He still did not know why the sabotage that had been done in the academy was unnoticed until Mizuki was caught red-handed. Sometimes he did not understand what Lord Third was thinking. Maybe he did not care too much about training Naruto because that would play right into Danzo's designs. Or maybe it was guilt, but Naruto's development could have been far better than what it was. Of course, he himself was not guilt-free in that regard. But now he finally had a chance to right his shortcomings. giving the last Uchiha another reason to be a flight risk. Not bloody likely. The boy was obsessed with revenge, and if he felt like the village was holding him back, he would turn traitor in a heartbeat. Yes, those two are high profile, he agreed in a somber tone. Don't forget my genius sister who is clearly the best out of the graduating lot. These scrubs are not worth the hype, he harumphed, looking affronted by the notion that he had not considered Sakura as a reason why the team must be graduated. Sometimes Kakashi wondered whether a powerful shinobi existed who did not have some quirk or the other. Here was another genius, who was an overbearing older brother, bordering on being a siscon. One way or the other, you will be railroaded into leading this team. So I was just scoping out whether my sister was slotted into the right team or not. Frankly, I am unimpressed, he said, glaring at the two boys who had just left the terrace. Kakashi remembered how the two of them had shuddered when Sakura mentioned Ichigo. Do you know them? He asked, fishing for information. Oh, those two? Well, one was pestering Sakura for dates regularly. So I beat him up, he said nonchalantly. Kakashi could already feel a migraine incoming. The other one is a funny story. Influenced by some stupid friends, Sakura apparently started to develop a crush on him. Now how could I ever let that stand? So I challenged him to a duel and beat him up. I then told her that she is only allowed to date boys who are stronger than me. Mom was pissed, but Dad approved, he said with a proud look on his face. Kakashi sighed as he rubbed his forehead. Well, don't beat them up anymore, he said, unwilling to continue this conversation. He bid a hasty farewell and left the place. He knew that in the coming months, Ichigo was going to be a major pain in the ass. After leaving Sasuke buried up to his neck, he flitted through the forest, searching for Sakura. Right as he found her, 3 shurikens came hurling at him. Before he could blink, the incoming shuriken multiplied into a swarm of shurikens, just a second away from shredding him into bits. He swiftly substituted out of the way, screaming obscenities on the inside. Just what the hell was Ichigo teaching this girl? This was Lord Third's A-rank jutsu. It required very precise control and concentration. Although the sheer volume of the shuriken clones was not exactly up to standard, it was a laudable attempt. It might be because a perfect execution would have depleted her reserves to such an extent that she would be vulnerable. The fact that a freshly minted genin could do this was absurd. It didn't matter if she got special training or not, she wouldn't have been able to do it if she didn't have the innate talent and hard work required for it. It looked like he really underestimated the girl just because of the shadow that her brother cast over her. He could feel a pulse of chakra beneath him, and he jumped away from the spot immediately. Earthen spikes erupted from the spot the next instant. Once again he couldn't help but be surprised. Another of his genin could do elemental jutsu. He truly did get the best team out of the lot. Seeing that she was trying to bury him from range, he wondered how she would react when he engaged in close combat. The next second, he was in front of Sakura, throwing a punch. He expected her to substitute or do anything, but instead, she took the punch, and immediately broke down into chunks of rubble. He did figure out that it was a clone, but he did not expect an Iwa Bunshin. A sizzling noise attracted his attention and he saw that the inside of the clone was stuffed with explosive tags. Beating a hasty retreat, he smirked as the explosion went off, and 2 arms rose from the ground, attempting to drag him downwards. He couldn't help but laugh out loud at that. He let himself be swallowed into the ground, laughing all the way. The moment Sakura burst out of the ground, he followed suit right behind her. It warms my heart that my prospective students are already trying to imitate me, he said as he delivered a chop to the back of her neck, knocking her out at once. Despite her talent, it looked like she needed more combat awareness. Challenging someone in their own field was giving your enemy an instant advantage. Experience would bridge that gap for her. He disappeared from the spot a moment later, eager to see how this team would proceed from here. So, what do you think? Kakashi questioned as he appeared next to Ichigo, who was once again hiding atop a tree. His students had just left the training arena, and as expected, he had to make up some excuse after they failed to work as a team. At least they decided to feed Naruto and showed that they were willing to work together. I think you were being unfair. You went easy on those two, but immediately knocked out Sakura at speeds she cannot counter yet, he said. You know as well as I do that things are not fair in the field. Better she learns that here than think that the enemy is restricted to a certain level, he drawled. You drive a hard bargain, but it's fair. It does seem like you've spent a lot of time training her, he said after a moment's silence. I mean, we don't have a clan backing us. I had to learn a lot of things the hard way. Thankfully, my parents are shinobi as well, and it allowed me to ask them for certain resources. I shudder to think how difficult it would have been if they were civilians. That's why I just want her to do her best. I have the means to help her be her best. We all want her to thrive in the field. It's not a safe place, and I'll sleep better if I know that she has the tools to protect herself, he said, finally a serious expression adorning his face. I understand. My father did the same, he said, scrounging up another unpleasant memory. Gods, he was a little shit back then. He wished that he could have been closer to his father, maybe then he would not have taken his life. Ah yeah, the White Fang. The man was a legend, said Ichigo with genuine admiration in his voice. Kakashi nodded and they stood there in silence for a while. Anyway, I'll be heading out on a mission tomorrow with my team. Please look after her, he said in a somber tone. Of course. I'll obviously look after my cute little genin, he said. Ichigo was being a worrywart, as the only missions Kakashi's team would be taking in the near future would be D-rank missions. Thanks. I'll see you later then, said the young Jonin as he disappeared with a shunshin. Kakashi took his leave as well and started moving towards the Hokage Tower. Kazashi Haruno was having the time of his life. He looked on as Mebuki and his children cleared the dining table after the sumptuous dinner they just had. Usually, they would have all gone out for a celebratory dinner. But there were gifts to be given that were not for prying eyes yet. Fortunately, Mebuki had pulled out all stops and made an amazing dinner. Ichigo had the house rigged with various seals that prevented any sort of spying. That was one of the main reasons why they did not head out tonight. He quietly left the room and returned a few minutes later with a scroll. He dearly hoped that his daughter liked her graduation gift. He knew that Inoichi and their allied clans were doing something similar. He had asked him what kind of gift they would be giving their children, but the answer he got was pretty lackluster. A symbolic earring might be enough for clan heirs since they already have access to all kinds of resources. For second gens like Sakura, something worthwhile would go a long way in helping her stay alive. Kazashi remembered his own graduation where his civilian parents gifted him his first proper set of kunai and shuriken. Thankfully, this was not his first rodeo. They had stumbled around a lot when it came to providing for Ichigo. But his son was self-sufficient and knew exactly what he wanted. That came a long way in them supporting him with his goals. Many people would think that Kazashi should be ashamed for letting his son outrank him at such a young age. To Kazashi though, it did not matter one bit. His children could only fill him with pride and nothing else. In a way, Ichigo and Sakura's success meant that he had fulfilled his job as a father and provided for his family. Nowadays, he was thinking of retiring. A lifetime as a genin was enough, and he was trying to convince Mebuki to retire as well, and just stay in the village as a part of the reserves. The funny thing was that Ichigo was always of the belief that Kazashi had a wellspring of hidden potential. So much so that he believed Kazashi could be a cage-level ninja. Maybe, if he had made different decisions in his youth, it might have been somewhere in the realm of possibility. Maybe, in another life, in another world, he had actualized the potential Ichigo believed him to possess. Here and now though, he was a career genin who was proud of his talented children. Nothing more, nothing less. As a result of observing and supporting Ichigo's rise, Kazashi and Mebuki were sufficiently equipped to aid Sakura. Thanks to Ichigo, they were able to capitalize on training her early on. This was her first stepping stone, and he hoped that they did not leave her wanting. Mebuki looked at him and nodded once everyone was seated. It was time. Sakura dear, once again, congratulations on graduating at the top of your class, he said. Your father and I are immensely proud of you. Mebuki was interrupted by Ichigo feigning a cough. She sighed in exasperation and continued. Yes, Ichigo is proud of you too. Like you would let anyone forget, she finished with a glare toward their mischievous son. Kazashi couldn't help but snort in amusement. Ichigo always loved to rile up Mebuki with his antics. He immediately adopted a serious expression when the glare was pointed toward him next. Before I was interrupted, what I wanted to say was that I hope you keep following your dreams. We'll always be here to help you. Your father and I have a small gift for you in celebration of your achievement, she said and gave him a pointed look. Kazashi smiled and placed the scroll on the table and pushed it toward Sakura. He pointedly ignored the sound of a whip that came from Ichigo's vicinity. Thank you. she said demurely and opened the scroll. She was no stranger to storage scrolls, so she looked at them, wondering if it was okay to unleash the contents. Go ahead, he encouraged his daughter. With a puff of smoke, a pile of books and scrolls appeared in front of her. She immediately began checking out the reading materials with glee. So far, all your training was to give you a leg up on becoming a balanced shinobi. The main goal of Ichigo was to make you effective in combat, to give you an edge in battles. Kazashi and I thought that it was time for you to begin branching out according to your innate strengths. All this literature is geared towards Iryojutsu and Genjutsu, said Mebuki. This is not everything though. We have spent a long time in the force, albeit as genin. We still have useful contacts nonetheless. Read up on all this at your leisure, and I will put you in contact with some medics. It's always prudent to learn Iryojutsu under someone's guidance, Kazashi said. Obviously, you know whom to approach with regards to Genjutsu. I've spoken to her. She agreed to guide you. But she wants you to read up all this first, stated Ichigo. Thanks, she said with a bright smile and hugged Mebuki and Kazashi. Well, it's not over yet. Time for my gifts, said Ichigo with a smirk, a box puffing into existence right in front of him. Sakura took the box from him and opened it at once. Placed atop a velvet cushion was a sheathed wakizashi. Kazashi had seen the sword already. He knew that it looked beautiful. With the grip the same color as her hair and the tsuba etched with sakura petals, it was a sword made to complement her appearance. She gasped as she gingerly reached for the blade. I am very sorry Sakura, but this is not what you think it is. For now at least, said Ichigo with a wince. You mean it is not like your zanjetsu? She asked in confusion. Kazashi's mind wandered towards the pitch-black dado his son had named zanjetsu. The sword had earned him a place in the bingo books and had also solidified his reputation when he was a newly promoted special jonin. The creation of the sword took him 2 years of relentless research and failures. It was an expensive process, but the result was more than worth it. Without Ichigo's aptitude for fuinjutsu, it would have been a foolish endeavor. But if it was one thing his son was good at, it was fuinjutsu. He could still remember how dumbfounded he was when his 8-year-old son told him that he was creating his own fuinjutsu script. The only people who had that kind of talent were the Uzumaki. Fearing a similar fate, Kazashi had done his best to impart the importance of secrecy to his son. Not that it was needed. Ichigo had bided his time and used the time in the academy to hone his craft rather than jump towards early graduation. JavaScript, he called the new fuinjutsu script. Why that specific name, Kazashi would never know. But Ichigo was rather adamant that it was the proper name for his variant script. It wouldn't have turned out so well for them if all this had been revealed to the others when he was still in the process of developing his skill set. Meticulous planning had resulted in Ichigo only revealing his true capabilities once he had proper allies and solid backing. He shuddered to think how his son would have been exploited otherwise. Yes, your wakizashi does not have any special properties like my zanjetsu yet. It is a high-quality blade and can conduct chakra, but that's it. The reason for it is threefold. First, if word got out that you had a special weapon, you would be targeted in the field for it relentlessly. A lot of people would try to steal it from you. It would be a moot point because of the anti-theft measures I will inevitably place on the sword. But it would put you at needless risk anyway. The second reason is that I still haven't succeeded in finishing the fuinjutsu component of the blade. It will be quite different from zanjetsu, that much, I can assure you. How different? Ah, that would be telling, he said and stuck his tongue out. But it would help me learn more fuinjutsu, she pouted in response. Not exactly. This process will not be conducive to learning direct combat applications of those scripts. You are better off improving your personal strength and focusing on your training. I want you to be strong enough to ward off any would-be weapon thieves first. I can teach you the rest later. Fine. Then why did you give me this sword now? She asked. That ties into the third and final reason. The sword that you will eventually get will be of the same dimensions. The balance, the look, and feel, even the appearance will be the same. It looks like a normal wakizashi, it performs like a normal wakizashi. When we upgrade it, nobody will notice the difference until you pull out the ability I'll graft onto it. It'll be your ace in the hole. I need you to get used to this so that when you get the superior version, you can hit the ground running. Alright, she said without any more complaints. Kazashi smiled at that. Sakura was always a reasonable child. He thanked heavens that she did not turn out to be a spoiled brat. There is another reason for it, Ichigo said as he scratched his chin with an annoyed expression on his face. When I had finally finished Zangetsu, I was already a Tokubetsu Jonin with a lot of important connections. I was a proven asset to the village and had the backing of a prominent clan who owed me a lot. Even then certain elders tried to railroad me into becoming a weapon manufacturing facility for the village. When did this happen? Asked Sakura. Last year, a few months after my promotion. They thought that it would be easy to convince a 13-year-old on what is good for him, he snorted in derision. Not bloody likely. I've been trying to rein you in all your life and had no success. Fool should have picked a different target, said Mebuki with a vicious smile on her face. She had been very upset when she heard that the Hokage's advisors were trying to manipulate their son. Yeah, anyway, their plan was doomed to fail. They do not have the final say in what happens in the village after all. Like I told you, I had the backing of a prominent clan. They were willing to nominate us for clan status, he finished with a flourish. Sakura gasped in response. Kazashi and Mebuki couldn't help but smirk at that. This song and dance was something he had seen for years now. Ichigo was always a good storyteller, and would often tell Sakura different bedtime stories with effective inflections. She would always be enthralled by the stories and play along with him. It often reminded him that despite the boy's seriousness, he was still a 14-year-old. There are certain requirements that need to be fulfilled for a family line to be considered a clan. Secret techniques or a bloodline limit was the first requirement. Active shinobi serving the village is another requirement. The Hokage's acceptance is the final requirement. The best thing about all this is that many clans have been in a decline due to back-to-back wars. So our lower number is not actually a major issue. Are you being serious? She asked incredulously, dropping the play acting. Dead serious. We are not a clan yet. But we are in the process of becoming one. Things would have been way easier if we had a bloodline. Alas, we only have my secret techniques. So, we need more numbers. We will be under probation until we get more members. Basically, I need to grow up, get married, and chuck out a few kids. We'll still enjoy the benefits until then. We just won't be given a full-on clan status before that milestone. It's all stupid bureaucratic posturing and pointless politics. Oh, replied his stunned daughter eloquently. It'll boost morale as well, you know. Lord Third was highly supportive of it. We lost the Uchiha clan quite a while ago and many other clans are on a decline. Maybe the fact that a new clan is formed will motivate people to develop their own secret techniques and try to attain a similar position. Not that it is easy, said Ichigo. And that solved the issue? Just like that? She asked. Of course not, dear, interjected Mebuki. The village was formed by different clans coming together and putting aside their differences. What do you think will happen if the village asks the clans or their individual shinobi to hand over their secret techniques? Dissension, she replied succinctly. Exactly. They can't afford to set such a precedent, or all the other clans would revolt in a heartbeat. Even if we were not a clan, they can't just snatch secret techniques and individual property without a very good justification. But that is not the main issue here. They were not asking for my techniques. They were instead trying to make me do something which would take a lot of time and effort, and hamper my growth. If we were a clan though, they can't dictate us on our practices. Look at the Hyuga clan. The assholes enslave their own family, and the village does not intervene at all, said Ichigo with a scowl. Mind your language, Ichigo, barked Mebuki at once. Yes, Mom. Why I am telling you all this is because, keep in mind that you are not supposed to teach my fuinjutsu to anybody else. No matter what sort of coercion or justification they give you, you are well within your rights to tell them to fuck off. Ichigo. Sheesh Mom, just cut me a break. Sakura, now that you are an official genin, some higher-ups might try to be clandestine and try to get more information, or some idiots might outright order you. I am telling you to not trust anyone. Especially an old cripple with bandages wrapping his right eye. His name is Danzo and he is very interested in getting his hands on our secrets. Mom and Dad are planning on retiring soon, and they don't have the know-how about my script. You, on the other hand, are just starting your career, and know the basics, so you need to be careful, he said. Okay, she mumbled with a downcast expression. Kazashi immediately engulfed his daughter in a hug. Our intention is not to scare you, Sakura. It is just that we want you to know about the issues you might face. Many people don't want others to rise above their stations. Therefore, it is better to be prepared for all kinds of opposition, he said. Don't worry. I will always look out for you, said Ichigo, a palpable pressure emanating from him, almost drowning the entire room. Anyway, now that we are done with the serious stuff, it is time for my other gift. He shifted back to his normal demeanor and urged them all to follow him. Once they all reached the backyard, he motioned them to stop and then turned around. Look at the hand seals carefully, Sakura, he said as he bit his thumb and smeared his palm with blood. He then went through a set of hand seals and slammed his hands on the ground. With a puff of smoke, a 9 feet tall polar bear appeared in front of them. The bear was wearing samurai armor sans a helmet and had a massive axe strapped to its back. A set of claw-shaped scars adorned the right side of its face. Overall, the summon looked menacing. Kazashi was familiar with the white bears though. The Haruno family had no reason to be intimidated by Ichigo's summons. Behind the hard exterior, almost all of them were big softies. Yo, Shirokuma, his son waved at the bear cheerfully. Ichigo, he spoke in a deep voice and then looked at the audience before continuing, so it is time? Yup. Sakura, step forward, said Ichigo. Shirokuma tapped his vambrace, and a scroll almost as tall as Sakura appeared in his hands. He deftly unfurled the scroll and placed it vertically in front of himself. Go ahead. Kazashi nudged his daughter forward as she stood there, dumbstruck. Sakura Haruno. You have been given the honor of being a summoner for the polar bears of Shiroi Sundora. We are a prideful clan. We stand tall despite the harsh conditions of our home. Generally, we have vigorous tests before we allow anyone to summon us. But, Ichigo has done a lot for us. His seals have allowed us to flourish in recent years. He tells us that you are a capable kunoichi. We have no reason to question his assessment. Therefore, you will not undergo such tests. Although to summon the boss, you would need to pass his tests at a later time. Please sign your name in this scroll. He points to the space next to Ichigo's name. Well, it wouldn't be much of a gift if you had to spend days on end in a frozen wasteland, said his son. Don't call it a wasteland, deadpanned the bear, long used to his son's antics. Kazashi noticed that there were only 2 names preceding Ichigo's and they were unheard of in recent times. He wondered how long the bears had gone by without any summoners. He watched as his daughter cut her finger, signed her name in blood, and placed her bloody fingerprints below the name. She got up with a determined look on her face. Got the hand seals? Asked Ichigo. Boar, dog, bird, monkey, and ram, she answered confidently. Perfect. Remember that you need to practice one-handed seals more from now onwards. Especially since your right hand will be occupied with the sword. Go ahead then. Smear the blood from the cut on your palm. Let the chakra flow into your hands and then expel it outwards from there. Use a quarter of your chakra this time, Ichigo instructed. Kazashi knew that his daughter would be precise with the chakra usage. She always had exceptional chakra control. It made it way easier for Ichigo to teach her various techniques. Sakura smirked in response, swiped her bloody finger on her palm, and performed the seals with just her left hand. She then slammed said hand into the ground. With a puff of smoke, a polar bear, half as tall as Sakura, appeared in front of her. The bear cub was clothed in a green kimono, with a green ribbon tied into a bow on her head. With wide eyes, the bear looked around, before it caught sight of Shirokuma. He nodded at the bear, and it immediately turned toward Sakura, who was now sitting on the floor, eyes level with the cub. Hello. I'm Sakura Haruno, the new summoner of the polar bears, she said as she held her hand out. I am Kyokuma, daughter of Shirokuma, squeaked the bear cub as she shook Sakura's hand. Kazashi looked at the larger bear and could see that he was beaming at his daughter. Pleased to meet you, Kyo. I can call you Kyo, right? She asked. Yes. My friends and family call me Kyo. Are you my friend now? The cub asked as she tilted her head to the side. Of course, said Sakura as she finally lost her self-control and hugged the fluffy bear. Yay. Let's eat fish together to celebrate our friendship. The bear jumped in place excitedly as her father slapped his paw to his face. Get to know each other. I will bring you some fish, Mebuki said indulgently before she briskly walked back into the house. Kazashi suspected that she wanted to pet the bear cub herself, and was using her fondness for fish as an excuse. He chuckled as Ichigo and Shirokuma began to inform Sakura about the ins and outs of working with the polar bears. He slowly walked back into the house, leaving the bears and their summoners to it. Be careful, dear, her mom said anxiously as she walked out of the house. Of course mom, she replied, and shunshined out of the spot. People in her clan still thought that she was a fragile little thing. It was fair enough, as she spent most of her life getting exhausted from menial physical tasks. It took a long and hard road to reach where she was right now. As she flitted from rooftop to rooftop, she anxiously rubbed the nape of her neck, where her seal lay dormant. The seal was pretty much useless now since she had confronted the Edo within her quite a while ago and subsumed it. She had become more aggressive and acerbic as a result, but it was better than the alternative. Checking to see if the seal was present became a habit nonetheless. She could have asked Ichigo to remove it, but she liked the feeling of security that the seal provided her. She liked her mind under her control. Thank you very much. The seal was now an important asset of the Kurama clan. Whenever a member would be born with the capability to wield illusions up to her level, they would no longer be hampered by their second personality. It was a crippling issue that affected the clan's generational geniuses and caused the clan's standing to decline. Now they will be back on the rise again, thanks to Ichigo's seal. She remembered the early days when she had trouble coping with the rest of her academy class. Lord Third had assigned the genjutsu expert, Yuhi Kurenai, as a response to her father's petitions. If things had gone as per plan, she would now have been like Lee, training under a specialist and focusing on bettering herself. But the sanctimonious bitch had told her to give up and had dared to seal up her powers when she refused to give up. It was a blessing that a proper fuinjutsu prodigy was her childhood friend, or else who knows what kind of a mess that stupid seal would have caused. Now, at 13 years old, she was a newly promoted Tokubetsu Jonin. She loved to rub that in the bitch's face whenever she saw her. Not suitable to be a ninja, was she? She'd show the red-eyed cow. Their team was highly regarded due to the myriad rescue missions they had done. All three of them were initially just chunin under Ichigo's leadership, who was a Tokubetsu Jonin back then. Recently though, the three of them were promoted to Tokubetsu Jonin due to their rapid improvement, and a year of exceptional mission records. Ichigo had also become a Jonin, and it had brought a lot of attention to their team. She liked it purely for the fact that her achievement was a slap on the face to the naysayers who said she would never be a proper kunoichi. She arrived at her team's designated meeting point 5 minutes early and wasn't shocked to find Hana sitting there, giving belly rubs to her ninkin. Upon sensing her arrival, the dark gray triplets yipped and ran towards her at once. Yakumo laughed as she kneeled down and began petting the three dogs. "Good morning, Yakumo," said Hana, as she got up from her spot and approached Yakumo. "Morning to you too, Hana." The dogs yipped once again and Yakumo laughed in response. "Of course. Good morning to you three cuties as well. Do you know why we are being deployed so soon?" "We just got back from a mission yesterday," asked Hana. "You have been a kunoichi way longer than I have been in the field, Hana." "If you don't know, how would I know?" she responded with mirth, but she too was curious. Due to her frail body, she got tired easily. Back-to-back missions were more of a drag for her than the others. Of course, she had trained hard to reach chunin levels, but it still took a toll on her. Her genjutsu prowess had propelled her towards the Tokubetsu Jonin rank, but she still had a long way to go in terms of physical ability. If it weren't for this inherent weakness, she would have been shooting for a Jonin rank just like her squad leader. Alas, she had to work thrice as hard as others to bring up her speed, strength, and stamina up to an acceptable level for her rank. "Hello," an all too familiar voice said, as her infuriating teammate joined them with a minute to spare. "Cutting it close, aren't we?" she snarked at the smiling creep. She never liked him very much. Part of it was her competitive nature, as both of them used drawings as conduits. Another part of it was because Sai was a legitimate annoyance. He always did his best to infuriate her, and would only stop when Ichigo told him to stop. "Well, the captain isn't here yet. I arrived a minute before the agreed time. Also, I do not require an early start due to a lack of stamina," he said without any inflection in his tone. His facial expression didn't change at all as well. One of these days, she was going to trap him in an illusion and convince his body that he no longer had a tongue. "Morning, humans and doggies. Looks like you're all on time again," said their captain as he appeared next to them, right before she was about to lay in on the annoying prick. He swept back his spiked pink hair as he yawned without a care in the world. "Do you know why we are being called so soon?" she asked him. "I have an idea. If I am correct, then it is something important. Although I would have loved to stay home for a while. Apparently, Sakura has been doing nothing other than D ranks. I thought I would have some time to train her, he said with a scowl. First give her time to get through the reading material you all dumped on her, said Yakumo. Oh, she is blazing through them. Expect me to randomly show up with her for those genjutsu tips and tricks you promised, he said nonchalantly. That fast? You really should have pushed her to graduate early like me. We could even have been in the same team, said Yakumo as she scowled at Sai. She wondered how it would have been to have Sakura as a teammate instead of Sai. She was a year older than Sakura, but she never had many positive relationships with people her age. Ah, but she isn't a rebellious little girl like you, Yakumo, he said with a drawl. Yakumo brushed it off as she knew that he was not taking a dig at her. She always had a chip on her shoulder and still does. She had a lot of people to prove wrong, so she took the opportunity to graduate early when it presented itself. She could understand what Ichigo was on about. He was training Sakura in a safe environment and getting her skills beyond the level of ordinary genin. That plan would have been hampered if she graduated early and spent a lot of time doing missions. Well, as long as she shows that she's the best out of the lot, it's enough, I suppose, she said reluctantly. My brother complains about always getting beaten up by her during sparring, said Hana with a smirk. Sounds like your brother is a bitch. Spends too much time with dogs, said Sai with the same old creepy smile on his face. This ticked off Hana something fierce. Hana was the gentlest member of the team, but Sai always managed to get under her skin some way or the other. As the Haimaru triplets let out a synchronized growl, she took a long breath and centered herself. Let's get going, Ichigo. I don't want to explain why our teammate is all banged up right before the start of a mission, she said. Right. Sai, play nice. I would have skinned you alive if you commented about my sister like that, said Ichigo, losing all playfulness. I apologize, Hana, Sai said, without a change in his fake expression. Looking at it, Yamaka once again wondered what happened to the boy to screw him up so much. Hana nodded her head curtly and turned away from him. Alright, enough lollygagging, let's head out, Ichigo said and disappeared in a puff of smoke. The three Tokubetsu Jonin began following their squad leader at once. In no time, they reached their destination. As they made their way into the building, Yakumo's mood plummeted as she came face to face with the stupid bitch that almost ruined her life. Hey Hana, you heading out already? Asked her brother. His little ninkin barked a greeting which was returned by the Haimaru triplets. Yakumo took a few seconds to observe the team that had been assigned to Kurenai. All prominent clan kids. She wondered who had the bright idea to entrust more clan kids to the person who almost crippled a clan heiress. But then again, Lord Third was okay with sealing her up due to the Edo. Not like his student who is known for fuinjutsu could have taken a look at her before doing that, right? As Hana talked to her brother, Yakumo kept glaring at Kurenai, who had the audacity to smile at her. Right then and there, she felt a boiling rage within her that rivaled the malevolence of the Edo that used to reside within her. A hand clamped on her shoulder and snapped her out of her fugue state. She looked backward and saw Ichigo standing right next to her, shaking his head. Yakumo, control, he whispered in a voice too low to be heard by others. Although, she was sure that Hana and her brother heard him with their enhanced senses. She heard a whine from below and saw that the triplets had approached her. They headbutted her shin and wagged their tails. She smiled at the faithful dogs and ruffled their heads. Hana's dogs always managed to calm her down. Sometimes she really hated the increased aggression that subsuming the Edo brought along. Alright, we have a summons to fulfill. Nice to meet you, Kurenai and team, said Ichigo as he motioned his team to keep moving. Tell mom when she's back from her mission. I'll leave behind a note after getting briefed anyway. But still, Akamaru, look after the idiot while I'm gone, she said, and the ninkin barked cheerfully in response while her brother protested the parting remark. Right as they crossed them, Yakumo couldn't help but let a little bit of her spite show. Hey Hyuga, be a little careful, yeah. Your teacher has a habit of making false promises and then giving up on you midway. Who knows, she might even seal up your eyes, she said as Ichigo rubbed the bridge of his nose. The shy Hyuga seemed startled for a second before she drew in further into herself. What? Shouted Hana's brother as he whirled around, an indignant expression on his face. Kiba, it's all right, Kurenai said and then turned around. She glanced at the Hyuga before returning her attention towards Yakumo. I made a wrong call. I've apologized to you several times as well. I'd appreciate it if you didn't try to mislead my genin. Mislead? I'm just speaking the truth. I'm surprised they even gave you a team after what you did, she snarled as the rage came back to the fore once again. What else do you want me to do then? Snapped back Kurenai, finally losing her composure. I want you to shove your sanctimonious. Before she could continue, a gentle cough interrupted them. She could feel a minor genjutsu that amplified the sound so that they could all hear it amidst the brewing argument. They all turned towards the source to find a frowning Ichigo. Yakumo, Kurenai, I think it would be for the best if we didn't do this where any potential clients or superiors could listen, he said, tilting his head towards the door that led to Lord Third's office. I understand. I'll meet you when you're back from the mission. We can't keep dancing around this forever, Yakumo. It is not good for us, she said as her mask of professionalism slid back onto place. For what it's worth, I really am sorry. I hope that you could find it in you to forgive me. She then herded her team around and left the place quickly. Ichigo sighed and then turned towards her. Look, I know that it was messed up, but if you keep egging her on, it'll get ugly. Remember Yakumo, she was not the only one who made that call, he said, not wanting to air out the whole situation. Yakumo glanced at Sai and understood why Ichigo was so furtive right now. He had always been tight with information around Sai. She thought back to the whole situation and knew that what he was saying was right. If they weren't childhood friends, then Ichigo would never have known about her powers being sealed up. Kurenai had gone ahead and gotten approval for sealing up her uncontrollable powers rather than train her up to control them. Lord Third trusted his Jonin's capabilities too much. I know, it's just that seeing her with a team infuriates me, she groused. I understand, but we can't do anything about it. Moreover, did you get a proper look at her team? All prominent clan kids. They'll all specialize in their clan jutsu and nothing else. No offense to your brother Hana. I've tried getting him into Iryo jutsu. But the brat doesn't want to do anything other than punch and claw at his opponents, said Hana. So yeah, I bet you my sword that the so-called genjutsu mistress won't be imparting her specialty to any of them, he said as they walked towards the office. Hey, that's a sucker bet. Just you wait, I'll snatch that title from her soon enough, she smirked. Sorry Ichigo. I should have kept my cool, especially after you warned me beforehand, she whispered right before they stepped in. It's all right, he replied nonchalantly. As they lined up in front of the Hokage's bench, the man was looking at them with a smile on his face. Good morning, he said and picked up a scroll from his desk. As they responded to his greeting, he threw the scroll to Ichigo, who deftly caught it. Take a look at it and let me know if your team is up for the mission. I know that you just got back from your previous assignment, but needs must. I apologize for overworking you, he said. It's all right Lord Third, said Ichigo as his eyes flew over the words written in the scroll. While your team leader is gauging the mission parameters, please tell this old man how your training has been going on. Does anybody need any pointers? Asked the professor with a bright smile. It's been going well, Lord Third. I've been improving my Iryo jutsu as of late. Mainly to bridge the gap in my knowledge, said Hana. Of course, Hana was exceptional with Iryo jutsu in the veterinary branch. Ever since she joined the team, she had been trying hard to improve herself when it came to healing humans as well. She was a good medic already, but as of late, she was reaching the same level of her veterinary skills. Excellent. Do let me know if you need any help. What about you Yakumo? He asked her next. I have been working on nature transformation. Apart from that, taijutsu is a perpetual grind for me as you know, she said. Good. Keep up the progress and you'll be promoted in no time, he said with a strained smile. She liked to imagine that he was feeling guilty for listening to the bitch and almost torpedoing her career. He then looked expectantly at Sai, but the boy just kept staring back with an incessant fake smile on his face. What have you been working on, Sai? He finally asked. My art, Lord Hokage, the boy replied without any elaboration. All right. Keep it up, he responded after a moment of silence. She could see that he was exasperated with the boy, but that was nothing new. We can do it, Lord Third, said Ichigo as he rolled up the scroll. She caught sight of his expression and was curious about what the mission was. Ichigo only had that expression on his face when he was planning something nefarious. Perfect. Let me give you an overview of the mission. You can get the rest of the details from Ichigo. You were all briefed about the traitor we caught last week, correct? Once they gave him the affirmation, he continued, the TNI force has been hard at work trying to ferret some details out of the traitor. As a result, we know the location of a few bases that belong to Orochimaru. She could hear Hana take a sharp breath upon hearing that. Yakumo herself had clenched her fist, knowing that they will be venturing out on a dangerous mission. I sent out a couple of teams to scout the location for any activity. We have a few targets now. Your team will go to one such target, he said. Mission parameters, Lord Hokage? Asked Yakumo. Infiltration and espionage. I chose your team for this specific purpose. You have a good track record in search and rescue missions. This is something similar, just with a different target. Orochimaru doesn't know that we are aware of these bases. I want this illusion of safety to prevail, he said, nodding at Ichigo. It's our usual rescue strategy. The only difference will be that we won't be stealing anything or anyone. We will be making copies of the documents there on the sly, and leave the base undisturbed. As long as they don't think it to be compromised, we will keep getting more information from it, said Ichigo. Yakumo's mind went on overdrive, imagining how the mission was supposed to proceed. Hana and the dogs will be mapping the location of the bogies from the ground while Sai will be doing the same from the air. Once the signal is given, she'll drown the whole place with her potent genjutsu and put them all to sleep. Ichigo will contain them with his suppression seals and place more unnoticeable seals around the place to monitor it. After that, all they would need to do would be to copy all the documents and leave. She would need to alter their memories, but that would be easy with her Kekkei Genkei. The team composition inspired confidence in her that they could do this mission for sure. Any questions or any concerns? Asked the Hokage. When they all shook their head, he smiled in response and leaned back in his chair. Alright then, Team Ichigo, you are on the clock as of now. Get the complete briefing from your squad leader and proceed. They all bowed in response and left the office with haste. Yakumo double-checked her belongings as they practically flew towards the village gate. As Ichigo started giving them more information about the mission, Yakumo wondered what kinds of horrors she would see in that lunatic's base. Ino tapped her foot impatiently as she waited at the usual spot. Ever since they graduated last week, her individual training had taken a hit. Sure, they did some team training, but it was not the same. The Ino-Shika-Cho combo was something that was handed down to them. Even though it was famous, the formation did not give her much satisfaction since her role was more towards information gathering than frontline combat. Ironic, considering her father was the head of the analysis team in the intelligence division. Even though she had the aptitude for it, and was not averse to it, she would not give up on her normal training and fall behind Sakura any more than she already had. Feeling impatient, she went through familiar motions, closed her eyes, and let her range expand. She sensed nothing beyond what she expected. She let her sensory perception drop and began warming up instead. If Sakura was running late, then she would already be making her way back at top speed. She on the other hand had to warm up, lest the psycho got on her case. After a few minutes, Sakura jumped into the training ground, looking flustered and annoyed. What are you scowling for? You're the one who's late, said Ino. Before Sakura could respond, a rain of senbon showered on them. They both moved out of the way without any hesitation. Had the Tora mission yet? Asked Sakura as she angled her head out of the path of an oncoming kunai. How is that relevant? And no, answered Ino as she threw a shuriken to collide with the projectile coming her way. You'd understand why I was late if you had the misfortune of doing that mission, said a scowling Sakura as she drew her new wakizashi. Might as well get some practice with this, she added as she used the sword to turn around and rapidly deflect another cluster of projectiles that came from a different direction. Sounds like you're making excuses for your tardiness, Ino responded as she spun a kunai in each hand before reverse gripping them and slashing at her own set of projectiles. Oh, shut up and get to work, snorted Sakura as they shifted to a back-to-back stance and ran through hand seals at a breakneck pace. It was time to go on the offensive. Ino slammed her hands on the ground as the earth around them rose and encased them in a protective cocoon. She immediately lit a match and kept it burning with a steady input of chakra. She didn't need to worry about burning out the oxygen since they weren't going to stay inside long enough. It was just a quick way to catch their breath for a few seconds. At the same time, Sakura stomped her foot hard as the land around their spot rippled inwards, feeding more material to the dome. G4? Asked Ino. Nah, let's go with G6, responded Sakura. Ino paused for a second, thinking about the proposed plan, and nodded. Let's do it, she said as she blazed through a set of hand seals, focusing on all the accumulated mass in the dome. By the time she finished the sequence of seals, she was already halfway submerged underground, courtesy of Sakura. Ino finished another set of seals and let herself submerge completely. They waited for a second before something impacted the dome. Taking the cue, Ino flared a bit of chakra and the dome exploded with a deafening force, sending shrapnel flying everywhere. By design, all of these flying clumps of earth were heavy and sharp. A lethal combination, as it would cleave through most obstacles in every direction. They both shook their heads in dismay as they picked up on minute vibrations that stated that the target had moved out of range easily. Without wasting time, they followed the rest of the plan and split up, still moving underground. Ino sighed as she prepared herself for an ambush. It was going to be a long evening. She slumped on the ground, out of breath. Sakura was in a similar state, but she tapped her storage seal first, pulling out 2 bottles of orange juice from the subspace. Ino deftly caught the bottle thrown at her and gulped down the juice with abandon. "Ah, none for me?" asked the sadistic bitch as she plopped down next to them. "Fuck off," mumbled Sakura as she rubbed her bruised forearm. Contrary to her words, she brought a box out of the seal and placed it in front of Anko. The grown woman jumped at it like a kid on a hunt for Rinne festival gifts. She opened the box and stuck her face into it at once, taking a deep sniff of the contents. "I knew you cared," she said with a smirk before she picked up a stick of dango from the box and ate it all in one go. Despite being used to her antics for almost a year, the sight still unnerved Ino. For the past year, Anko had decided to take over their training whenever Ichigo was absent on missions. She apparently owed him for something and decided that she would train Sakura when he was unavailable. Ino knew that Anko meant well, but she had a tendency to overdo it often. She scowled as she looked at the cuts and bruises that accumulated throughout the impromptu skirmish. The sun had begun to set, and her plans for some jutsu training had gotten derailed. There was some more time left before she had to go home for dinner. Not wanting to waste time, she tapped her storage seal and picked out the scroll that Ichigo had gifted her for her graduation. He had also somehow gotten her mom to give him all her combat attire and had stacked them with seals that made them as sturdy as armor. Speaking of, his absence and Anko's presence in the training ground had been the reason she had even begun warming up before the session. Because, if Anko was there, then that simply meant she would jump right onto a skirmish before anything else. "Where's he? Didn't he return yesterday?" asked Ino. "Yeah, but there was an urgent mission it seems. He left with his team today," said Sakura. "You ungrateful brats, am I not enough for you?" asked Anko with a playful tone. "Ask us when we're not bruised all over due to your tender mercies," said Ino without much heat. They appreciated Anko's help deep down, but telling that to her face would lead to them being dragged into that accursed forest for extra training. Ino was fine with what they already had, "Thank you very much." "Bah, it's nothing and you know it. Anyway, Strawberry told me that you might have some specific things I can help you both with." "Out with it then," said Anko. Before that, can you both check if nobody's around?" asked Sakura with a conflicted expression on her face. "We're alone as far as I know." "Why?" asked Ino after a few seconds of sensing for any chakra signatures within her range. "Yeah, I've got some snakes running the perimeter. I'd know if someone breached it," stated Anko confidently. "It's just something Ichigo said," Sakura said, still that constipated expression on her face. "That's why I'm here, you brat. Don't worry about the old coots," said Anko, indicating the issue at hand. "It's not necessarily a secret, but I don't like the idea of random idiots monitoring us. Any more than usual in a hidden village anyway. I checked beforehand, but just wanted to make sure," said Sakura. Ino pondered for a second and understood what the problem was. She'd known that they had applied for clan status, which came with its own set of politics, especially people trying to gather intel. By the comment Anko meant, it could only mean the Hokage's advisors who, according to her father, were too nosy for their own good. For a second, she thought about informing him, but she knew that her father and Uncle Shikaku would already be on top of things. "So what exactly did you get?" asked Ino. "Let me show you," said Sakura as she wiped her palm over a bleeding cut and ran through a set of one-handed seals before slamming that palm on the ground. With a puff of smoke, a white bear cub, clad in a green kimono appeared in front of her. Going by the green ribbon tied on her head, Ino guessed the cub was female. The bear looked alert for a second before she caught sight of the juice bottles and the box of dango. She dropped her guard at once and pounced at Sakura. Sakura. Are we having a picnic? Where is the fish though? The cute cub squeaked out. At once, Ino had an uncontrollable urge to squeal and glomp the bear, but she held onto a thin mask of professionalism. Kyo, let me introduce you to my friends first, Sakura groaned as she adjusted the polar bear sitting on her lap. Kyo, meet Ino and Anko. Girls, meet Ki. Hello. I am Kyokuma. My friends call me Kyo. Are you new friends? Interrupted the excited cub. Yes Kyo, Ino said as her hand twitched, eager to pet the fluffy creature. Yay! Kyo shouted as she jumped from Sakura's lap and launched herself towards Ino. Seeing no reason to hold back, a beaming Ino caught the bear cub and started petting her eagerly. Sakura shook her head at the antics of her summon and pulled a box out of her storage seal. She wordlessly handed it to Ino. A part of Ino was really jealous about the summoning contract that Sakura now had. But another part of her relished the challenge. She'd find cute summons of her own and cuddle them whenever she wanted, and also fight together with them of course. The moment Ino opened the box, Kyo turned towards it and started munching on what appeared to be fish sticks. Looks like you got an excitable summon, brat, said Anko as she snorted at the antics of Kyo. She was nonchalantly petting the cub as well but was putting on false airs for no apparent reason. Anyway, I can help you with the summons. We'll be working on how to work in tandem with the beasties, after we finish our meal of course, she said as she devoured another stick of dago. Right next to her, Kyo polished off a fish stick in sync. Ino snorted in amusement and finished the rest of her portion of juice. What about you, Blondie? What have you got over there? Asked Anko after she stopped munching her food. Rock armor jutsu. It's better than the earth release hardening that I know, and not as ugly too. Ichigo said that it'll give me a passive boost towards offense and defense, she said, waving the scroll that she was gifted. Yeah, that's a tough one to pull. Not many people outside of Iwa know that jutsu. What problems are you having? Asked Anko. It's consuming more chakra than I thought. The ratio of the earth versus chakra consumed is pretty steeper than mentioned in the scroll, said Ino, thinking about the few times she tried and failed to perform the technique. That's simple. You need to work more on earth-natured chakra flow. Get better control over your element, and get a better understanding of the chakra flow technique. It'll help a lot with the issue you're having. I'll keep an eye on you while you practice, said Anko as she propped her chin on her hand. What does the jutsu do exactly? Asked Sakura. Ino had no compunctions about sharing the jutsu with Sakura. Another proof of them being best friends was their shared affinity for Earth. They often took turns learning different jutsu and teaching it to the other. This time, Sakura would be learning Iryo jutsu and would teach Ino later, while Ino did the same with this jutsu. You know the earth release hardening jutsu. It is somewhat similar, said Ino. So, gather rock, and surround ourselves in it like it's an armor. How is it different though? She asked. As I said, it's not as ugly, for starters. The armor is a thin, transparent layer, but does not lack in the defense portion at all. It's basically circulating earth-nature chakra throughout the body and absorbing the properties of the earth beneath us. Finally, we use all that to form the layer of armor. It's almost crystalline in appearance when it reflects light. Tanks blunt force like nobody's business, and gives a strength boost. The best part is, we don't need to keep pumping chakra to maintain it. Once you form it, it stays until it gets destroyed. Ah, that last bit would serve you well, said Sakura, referencing the mind-body techniques that left her vulnerable to attack. Yeah, since the team is going that way, it's better if I practice this more, said Ino as she scowled about her role in the team. What do you mean? Asked Anko. It's just the Ino Shika Cho thing. I know that it's a tradition at this point and that it's effective, but I'm just not a big fan of it, is all, she said. Ino knew that if she hadn't trained individually, she would have had no issues with the formation, but now, it just didn't seem balanced, especially when she knew more offensive techniques than Choji. You're in Asuma's team, right? Asked a thoughtful Anko. Yeah. And he knows what you can do. Yup. Then don't worry about it. Real-life situations are not always geared towards a specific plan. No plan survives first contact. You'd have to improvise based on what you have at that moment. Just practice well with your team and make it known that you can do more than what the formation assumes you can do. Also, ask that teacher of yours about chakra flow. He is an expert when it comes to that, advised Anko. Got it. Thanks, Anko, Ino said before freezing up, praying that she had not inadvertently volunteered for a training session in that infernal forest. What about you, Pinky? How's your team? She asked as Ino let out a breath of relief. It's a mess. We're being taught all kinds of teamwork drills and formations. One would think that the idiot who can spam unlimited clones would understand the importance of formations, but nope. On the other hand, the other idiot is too high and mighty for these lowly drills. Can you believe that they were both complaining over the tree walking exercise? They didn't know it. What are they teaching in the academy these days? Asked a baffled Anko. Not only did they not know it, they were pants at it. At least Naruto listens to the tips I give. Considering his nature and his connection with the Hokage, I genuinely thought that he was downplaying his skill in the academy. Turns out I was wrong. Nonetheless, he'll get better sooner than later. The Uchiha princess just scowls whenever I try to give any advice. Seems like he can't get over the fact that I one-upped him during graduation. She finished her tirade as she picked up Kyo with effort and hugged the bear. Who cares about the prissy moron? I'm pretty sure he's just waiting for his Sharingan to awaken. Then he'd coast on its merits. The jutsu thief. I'm glad that I'm not on that team though. You have my sympathies, Ino said solemnly and got cuffed on the head for her efforts. Ah, the Sharingan, Sakura said with a sinister smirk that Ino did not like at all. She knew that expression very well. It was the same one Sakura had when she goaded Ino into performing the mind-body switch jutsu and stood still as the jutsu bounced off her due to some bullshit seal. It had almost driven her father into a panic before Ichigo promised that the specific seal was only for the Haruno clan and that it was protected by some nasty encryption. Such a seal if widespread would make the Yamanaka clan obsolete. But thankfully, clan secrets held immense weight in the shinobi culture. Sakura most definitely had something up her sleeve, and when the jutsu thief tried to copy anything from her, he would get a nasty surprise. Alright, enough dawdling, let's get to work, commanded Anko as she made 2 clones who got ready to supervise her training, as the original got ready to finish the rest of her snack. Ino stood up with effort, looking forward to the hot bath and the warm food that was waiting for her after this torture session. The team settled down for supper. They would be breaching the hideout in an hour, and the captain did not want them to fight on an empty stomach. Sai unrolled his storage scroll and brought out Aki's Mapo tofu. The effect was immediate. Hana and her ninkin scrunched up their nose. Why do you eat that thing? As if normal Mapo tofu wasn't spicy enough. Just smelling that unholy thing sets my nose on fire, she said. Captain Ichigo introduced me to Aki's diner. Mrs. Aki even makes this version specifically at my request. How can I not be a loyal customer? He stated without inflection. That was partly true. The reason he liked the extra spicy dish was because it was something he could feel. For a defective human being whose emotions were stamped out, feeling something when eating food was a game changer. He got addicted to the burn, especially since sometimes it felt like the seal on his tongue was burning off due to the heat. His root training had enabled him to go through torture with a fake smile on his face. He was familiar with poisons and all sorts of unpalatable things. Also that he could survive in the worst conditions and finish his mission. Despite all that, there was something about extremely spicy food that kindled something within him. Something that even toxins couldn't do. Maybe because it tasted good despite the heat. He needed a better book to teach him how to word what he felt. Initially, when he was assigned to this team, he just thought of it as a conventional mission. Oh, how wrong he was. The year that he had spent with this team had changed him a lot. Hana was a very kind individual. Initially, he didn't care that his attempts at socializing were getting under her skin, but of late, he tried his best to filter what he said. More than once, he wished that he had burnt down the books that he had read about human interactions. He was doing everything wrong, but he didn't know otherwise. Although, just watching Hana and emulating her behavior helped him often. Yakumo, on the other hand, was someone Sai liked annoying a lot. She was a ball of angst that needed to lighten up, and this was coming from someone who was rubbish at socializing. Their main point of contention was their shared passion for art. Passion would be the wrong term to define anything Sai was involved with. Interest would be a better word. He was interested in art, yes. Yakumo was the one passionate about art. Nonetheless, she had made it something of a competition on who could perform better jutsu with their art. Was this what they called a rival? Sai would not know. Going by the description, it did fit the bill though. Hence, he liked to rile her up. A part of him did not want to lose when it came to the only thing he was interested in. Captain Ichigo reminded him of his dead brother Shin sometimes. He encouraged Sai to pursue his interest in art often. The captain had even introduced Sai to an art style he called expressionism. Sai was dreadful at it because understanding emotions was a hard task. But he would not allow himself to be subpar at art. So he had been improving, trying to get better at drawing emotions. Just like his brother, the captain was aloof, but sharp when the need arose. He sometimes felt something when he interacted with his captain. Something that reminded him of his brother, something that he thought he couldn't feel again. Other than that, the captain was tutoring him on conventional fuinjutsu, so that he can better his skills as a shinobi. The Haruno clan's fuinjutsu was proprietary and off-limits for him of course, and he understood that. It didn't change the fact that his growth had been more than satisfactory. At the end of the day, he still belonged to Root. He thought so, but this again was a conflicting area for him. He was no longer in the dark, serving the light. Even though he was an asset of Root, it didn't take away the fact that he was now in the light, a visible part of the great tree that was Konoha. The creed of Root was that you have no name. You have no feelings. You have no past. You have no future. There is only the mission. He had a name now. He felt some things now, even though they were minuscule. The captain's existence was a constant reminder of his past, to his dead brother. The tenet about having no future might still be intact in his case, but more often than not, he imagined bettering his art, overtaking Yakumo. He imagined getting to interact with other people as Hana did. So maybe he had a future, or at least a future he wanted for himself. Lastly, there was only the mission. But there were his teammates as well. It was all so confusing, and he often wanted to retreat to Root HQ and confess all these feelings. Brushing off his treacherous thoughts with practiced ease, he went ahead and began eating the mapo tofu. He really needed to thank his captain properly for introducing him to Aki's diner. As he ate, he reiterated the mission objectives in his mind. The raid was almost upon them, and he would not fail his mission. "All clear, Captain," he said, sitting atop his creation of ink as it soared the night skies above the hideout. "Acknowledged." Awaiting confirmation from Hana, came the captain's voice from the wireless radio. He spent the next few minutes flying in a pattern designed to imitate an actual bird in flight. Just in case someone spotted him from below and got suspicious. All the while, his eyes were glued to the binoculars, doing a sweep of the area below him. "We finished rounding up the perimeter guard," cracked Hana's voice from the radio. An Anbu team had already been here, mapping the guard schedule. All of it had been included in the mission scroll and had helped them a lot with catching them off guard. "Perfect. Send Yakumo to my location with one of the kit riplets. We'll be breaching as soon as she reaches me. I have the seal ready," said the captain. Sai kept his eyes peeled for any stragglers as he probed the connection with his various ink constructs on the ground. "Yakumo is here with the Ninkin. Sai, the moment she puts everyone inside the base to sleep, I want you to flood the place with your constructs. Wait for my signal," said the captain after a couple of minutes. "Yes, Captain," he responded as he readied all of his ink rats and snakes that were crawling outside the base. He saw Yakumo sitting in front of the captain, painting something on a canvas. From this distance, he couldn't see what exactly she was painting, but he was sure that she was painting something similar to people inside the base falling asleep. It was something he was all too familiar with it. She would then utilize that unfair keke genkai of hers and actualize the illusion into reality, at least the parts that affected human beings. As she weaved her genjutsu, she would get to know who was asleep and who was awake. Then she would convince their brains that nothing out of the norm happened. He saw her take out another canvas and paint on it. He was pretty sure that both of the paintings were for the two different scenarios. One for those who were asleep, and one for those who were awake. The area of effect nature and the massive range of her genjutsu were a massive asset in the field. He wondered whether Jonin Kurenai was really to be trusted with another team when she fumbled with such a talented person already. "I'm done," she got up after a few moments and spoke on their channel. "Do it now," Captain Ichigo said, and Sai responded the next second. He watched from his binoculars as the captain broke down the seal protecting the place, and installed a seal of his creation in place. He saw and felt his constructs rushing into the base. He whipped out a scroll and painted a few small birds to make up for the constructs that had gone into the base. His job was to scout every nook and cranny of the hideout using his constructs and to maintain overwatch outside. Hana was guarding the prisoners and would assist him in case any reinforcements popped up. But then again, if someone was alerted to their presence, then this mission was a failure automatically. Multitasking on such a massive scale was physically impossible for his brain, so he had created his scouts with some predefined directives. They would map the area and send him the information one by one based on priority, which was defined by a list that he had created with the captain's help. Previously, he just kept switching between the constructs, but that was inefficient. This method of including fuinjutsu in his creations was way more effective. If the script that the captain had created had advanced features like this, then it would be worth the hype indeed. He mused that he would be way more valuable to the cause if he had access to it. Was this what people called envy, or was it greed? He couldn't really differentiate. Sai spent the next few minutes relaying the information about the various rooms inside the hideout to the captain. From the information he got from his little spies, the captain and his clones were blitzing through the base, while the K9 had teamed up with Yakumo to ensure that all the people inside were accounted for. Normally, such a course of action would be risky, but Yakumo's genjutsu was one of the most potent things in their arsenal. Without a doubt, everyone inside the base would have fallen asleep unless they were significantly stronger than her. On the other hand, anyone short of Orochimaru himself would not be much an issue for the captain. So even if some people were awake, the captain would have knocked them out within seconds. From what he gathered, her genjutsu had worked as usual, and everyone was asleep. To sell the illusion of nothing out of the norm happening, she would then be using another potent genjutsu to convince their brains into believing that they were just going about their daily tasks. Moreover, most of them would already be asleep since it was nighttime. Meanwhile, Captain Ichigo and his clones would be making copies of all the information inside the place. The captain would also be placing his seals in some clandestine spots to spy on the base remotely. Those seals were somehow concealed perfectly to all senses. Lord Danzo had wanted him to get his hands on some of those seals. But if it is one thing the captain was very careful about, it was his seals. He could not procure any samples as a result. Even if he did, it would be a moot point. The captain had once told them that most of his seals couldn't be activated by people who did not know how his fuinjutsu worked. Something about the average shinobi not having the exportable packages and libraries. Of course, he had some commercial seals that he sold to the village, which could be used by anyone. But none of those were as efficient as the ones he personally used. Any attempt at decoding his commercial seals was also a bust since they tended to just disintegrate on any tampering. Sai sometimes did not understand Lord Danzo. Even when someone was contributing to the village, the man had an issue with them. They were told time and time again that the village was the most important thing in the end, but the one who taught them did not practice his own teachings sometimes. Such thoughts had been plaguing him recently. He understood that taking care of the threats to the village from the dark was a necessity. But he sometimes did not understand why some things were classified as a threat when they most certainly were not. Not that Lord Danzo had designated Captain Ichigo as a threat. It was just that he began seeing some patterns ever since he began serving the Great Tree as a leaf. He had introspected some of his older missions and could see that some of them were contradictory in nature. Instead of taking out threats to the village, in some missions, they had unnecessarily taken out a few assets just because they could possibly grow to be a threat, without an ounce of evidence pointing to the contrary. The cursed seal on their tongues ensured that they can't disseminate information about their organization to others, but it didn't ensure their loyalty. No, the loyalty was cultivated during their brutal training. Even then, the training itself stated that the loyalty to the village took precedence over anything else. When he was absolutely loyal to the village, why did he have to fear thinking about missions that could possibly be detrimental to the village? If he was just running route missions without reprieve, he would not have had these thoughts, or even introspected on his missions. Being a part of a high-profile team for an extended period put him under a lot of scrutiny from various avenues. Especially since the Hokage did not completely trust him and suspected him to be a part of a supposedly defunct organization. So he had been running the standard missions exclusively and only passing on information to Lord Danzo. All this had resulted in him thinking a lot instead of mindlessly doing missions one after the other. "I got everything. Are you done, Yakumo?" He heard the captain's voice over the radio. It sounded unusually clipped for some reason. Had something happened inside? He hadn't gotten anything out of the ordinary from his ink creatures though. "Gimme another minute. Almost done here," she responded. Sai, did we miss any room? Captain Ichigo asked as Yakumo was still performing her task. No Captain, you've got everything, he replied. Good. Let's get out of this hellhole post haste. Bring out all of these things and seal them inside a scroll, Sai. We don't want to leave behind any evidence. I will do a final sweep of this place to see if we left behind any traces. Hana, start placing the perimeter guards back in their places according to their supposed schedule. Yakumo will rewrite their memories just like she did the ones inside, said the captain. After a few minutes, Hana's ninkin ran out of the entrance and joined his two brothers. Yakumo and the captain followed suit and they joined Hana in doing the finishing touches. Alright, let's move out. Yakumo, wake them all up after we are clear, ordered the captain as they all began running through the forest surrounding the base. Once they had reached a certain distance, Sai began lowering his altitude to meet up with his teammates. In the cover of the night, his inky black mount lowered itself to the ground without any issues. They waited and watched for several moments. Once they were certain that no alarm went off, they took off towards Konoha. We got to pick up the pace, folks. The information that I got was not pretty at all. We need to report to Lord Third ASAP, said the captain as he began accelerating to a speed that they could all barely keep up with. It was nowhere near the captain's top speed, of course. Still, Sai wondered what the captain had read while copying the stuff inside the hideout that had spooked him so. I'm taking an extended leave after this, grumbled Yakumo. Back-to-back missions would have been tough on her indeed. She had always struggled with the physical aspect of things, and running at top speed would not be palatable to her. What are you smiling at? She snarled as she caught him looking at her. He often wondered why she always thought that he was making fun of her. There was a long way to go before he would ever truly understand Yakumo. The chapter is end here now. We will meet with another chapter, so don't forget to subscribe our channel for more content like this.